Someone here just suggested that our wonderful technician give a class on how to use technology, and then they specified. They said, "So just start with Cantor Smolash." That's what they
did not say that.
That's what I heard. So you see, the meaning of a communication is in the response. So they didn't say that, but that is what I heard. So L'chaim, we're now here. We're together. We're smiling. We're starting. We're finishing chapter 52 of the Tanya, which is the home stretch. We have this and then one more chapter. This is a beautiful Kabbalistic text that really is a whole life system, how to let your soul flow through your body, how to run your brain, how to run your heart, how to run your thought, your speech, your action, everything. So if you're interested, you can start from the beginning. We've been doing this for 4 years, believe it or not. And you can learn the whole Tanya here at Temple Israel, a beautiful system of Kabbalah. Today, we're talking about how the Shrina dwells. This is the last 3 chapters of the Tanya. What it means that the Shrina dwells on something. Big question, as we said many times, we know that God is everywhere. God is everywhere. So if God's already everywhere, what's this Shrina that's dwelling? What's the difference? And we learned that the Shrina is like when my soul comes into my body, this packet of powers emerges, then enters my brain, and from there flows to the rest of the body. Same thing with God. Lahavdil, it's a different phenomenon, but it's mirrored. There's a packet of energies that emerges out of the essence of God, out of that total infinity. That has all the energy that is meant for any of the spiritual worlds or the physical world already there in it, in one packet. That has to enter something like my brain. For the cosmos, that is the seichel of each particular world, the chokhmah, bin, and dat of each particular world. So the brain of that world, so to speak, or in fact, the Torah of that world, because what is God's chokhmah? That's Torah. What does God think? That's Torah. So the Torah of each world, that is the center where that light can enter and then diffuse to the rest of that world. And it's required because the light of the Shrina, this light that's in Malchus of Atzilus, with all these names we have for it, it is so godly that it would evaporate the worlds. The worlds would be nullified. It can't relate to the worlds directly. It has to first enter into a vessel, a garment, a tool, a limitation that is able to handle that light. And of course, God's intellect, Torah, which is Chokhmah of Atzilus, that's from so much higher than Malchus of Atzilus, that it's not impressed. It's a fine, come right in, beautiful, fits here. I'll adapt to every world. I'll come down. And it's unique in that nothing else enters the world on whatever world the level requires and still retains absolutely its status as God's Chokhmah. Still retains absolutely its status as God's Chokhmah. So everything else, when it comes down and adapts, it changes its status. But the Torah, like water, as it flows down, no matter how basic it gets, I'm just learning, as we said, of a garment. And if I'm holding the garment and you're holding the garment, who gets to own it? And of fines and payments and land, it can get so basic, so low in reality that it's just physical reality, and I can learn it. A child can learn it, and yet it retains its status absolutely as God's Chokhmah. Absolutely. So that Torah, that is the vessel that flows, that comes down to each world, that receives the light of the Shrina for that world, and then finally that allows that to enter and in fact create the worlds. And we also learned that it's not just that allows the light of the Shrina to relate to the worlds, but that the worlds are being created through God looking into the Torah. So if you want to know why it is that each world has its qualities, just look at the level of Torah that is the Torah of that world, through which the Shrina is now diffusing and creating that world. Right? Of course, if a world is being created through a particular lens, and the light's coming through that lens, or screen, or filter, whatever you want to call it, that filter will determine the quality of that world.
When you're saying world, you're talking about Yetzirah. What are you talking about?
Correct. So when I say world, we have 4 main categories of world. Atzilus, which is not really a world, but the real worlds, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, and then the physical world, which emerges from Malchut of Asiya. So really, three worlds that are created worlds. Atzilus is not a created world, it's another category. And then with the Alter Rebbe went and said, now look at how beautiful it is. Every level of the Torah corresponds to each particular world. If we start with the intellect, just pure Bina, that's the world of Bria, and Bria corresponds in Torah to Talmud, which is the rationalization, the thinking in God's mind, so to speak, that went into anything in the Torah. So the endless discussions that are recorded, the endless conversations, that's all to get back to what was God's rationalization, what was God's state of mind that led to this particular element of Torah. When the Shrina hits the Chabad of the world of Bria, which is the Talmud, then it shines and creates the world of Bria through that vessel. And that is an intellectual world by definition, because the Talmud is the intellectual aspect of Torah. Then it goes down, as we learned, and finally, Malchus of Bria hits the Chabad of Yetzira. That's a world of emotion. That corresponds in Torah to the Mishnah, which is not anymore what was God's thought pattern, why was God thinking this and that. That is just God's feelings. Finally, God's thought it through, so to speak. And of course, we're anthropomorphizing God big time here. So God doesn't have a physical brain. I'm using this so we can understand it, as the Alter Rebbe does. But once God's thought this through, now God's like, yes or no, chesed or gevura, right? Kosher or not kosher. And that's just a feeling. That's now the midot, that's the emotions. And so that is when the Shrina shines through that Chabad, which consists of Mishnah, what kind of world will be created? A world of emotion, a world of chesed or gevura. And finally in Mikra, when we get to the actual written words of the Torah, that corresponds to action, to physical reality. And again, when the Shrina shines through that filter of Mikra, of the written Torah, that creates the world of Asiya, the spiritual world. And finally, the physical world emerges. And we had a question that came up, a good question, which was, well, this seems upside down, because we know from learning that Torah, the Mishnah can't contradict the Torah. Torah has authority. And once something's in the Mishnah, the Gemara can't contradict the Mishnah, and so on. So why is it seemingly upside down? Why is it that the highest world is Talmud, the middle world is Mishnah, and then the lowest world is Mikra? Doesn't that seem counterintuitive? Now, that would be a difficult question if we looked at when these parts of the Torah emerged as something written down, so when they were recorded, because then historically we know the Talmud was recorded after the Mishnah was right, etc. But we're looking at it here in the abstract, and that's the answer to the question. Because although the Talmud was only completed and written down at a certain point, the abstract reality and constructs and energy of the Talmud was always there and came with the Torah, right? When God was teaching the Torah to Moshe at Sinai, and God said, yes, this, no, this, right? This bird is not kosher, this bird is kosher. Or fish, these fish are kosher, these aren't kosher. The thinking that went into it was already there, included in the Torah. The Torah included every aspect of the Torah. It just hadn't been recorded yet. And in some cases, look, the discussions were going to happen in the future chronologically, but we know Torah is above the world, so that doesn't bother us, right? But that God was already thinking that, even if we and our sages hadn't articulated and taught and written down what God had been thinking, God had thought the thing already. So in the abstract, God's thinking already was there, already preceded what God felt. And in the abstract was, so to speak, higher, right? What God wrote in the Torah came from what God felt, which came from what God thought, and all that was already there. So we're not looking at this in terms of when it was recorded or in terms of halachically what has authority over what. We're looking at it in terms of, in the abstract, the Torah came down with the written word, with God's emotional content, and with God's intellect all included in it. it was only later in history that we uncovered, okay, what had God been thinking? Nah, we think it's this, no this. And we finally recorded it. That happened later and halakhically. But in terms of the abstract, of course, God's intellect is above God's emotions, right? When we receive the Torah and forever. Is that good?
So there's no time in the Torah.
Well, yeah, of course, there's no time in the Torah. We know that. Yeah. Okay, with that as a long-winded caveat, let's dive in. We're on page 816, and we're going to go from there also. וגם משם נמשך התלמוד שלפנינו.
18.
Oh, my goodness, there you go. As a Kamosha Ketub, but Tikkunim, as explained in the Tikkunim, we're at 29th of ER by virtue. V'hitlabshut malchut datzilut b'malchut divriya mitlabeshet b'hechal kodesh kodeshim ditzira shehu chachma bina dat ditzira. No?
Well, that's close enough.
We're one above?
You skipped the one above.
Oh, so we did Rachamim. Okay, we'll do the whole page. Shemahen nimshach haheter ha'isur v'ha'kasher v'ha'pasul v'ha'chiyuv v'ha'ptur. From which? And let's start on line. Eleanor, go ahead if you unmute.
From which originate permission and prohibition. Permission deriving from kindness, prohibition from servitude,
Severity.
ritual validity and invalidity, liability and blamelessness, ritual validity and blamelessness, originating from attributes of kindness, and ritual invalidity and liability originating from the attribute of severity.
Right, as explained in the Tikkunim. So here we have the world of Yetzirah, the emotional world. It corresponds to the Mishnah, which says kosher, not kosher, right? Guilty, innocent. And here we're expressing, God is expressing God's emotions, chesed and gevura. And if chesed dominates, now the thing is going to be kosher or permitted. If gevura dominates, now the thing is going to be forbidden, unkosher, etc. And we might think that when we're talking about chesed, we're talking about chesed to us. Because I want to drink my coffee, but oi, what if something happened and someone spilled a little drop of chicken soup in my coffee? Is it now non-kosher? And then gevura dominates, and it's gevura to me, because Smolash won't get his coffee. So that's gevura, and there now it's not kosher, but of course it is. The Alter Rebbe says, no, actually, you're seeing it backwards. It's not chesed to us, it's chesed to the object in question. It's chesed to the object in question. Because what is the nature of reality? The nature of reality is godliness that's trying to get back to its source. And every spark, every piece of reality that comes and appears in my life, God has carefully arranged and put it there. And if you think of where the beans come from and where the paper comes from and where all the ingredients come from, been collected from maybe all over North America or even other countries, the world, brought into this cup, carefully put here. And now it's up to me. Am I going to say a blessing? Am I going to, drink this? Am I going to use it for good things and teach some Tanya? And all the sparks that are in here are now reuniting with their source. They're having a big, finally, I'm back to what I was created for, and they're being elevated. And when I'm a soul in heaven, this coffee is going to say, thank you, Smolash, for helping. You did your job as a Jewish drinker, and you elevated this properly by using it properly. So if there's a question, is this coffee kosher or not kosher? Can Smolash drink it or not? It's not chesed to me that, I can drink it and my nefesh b'amit, my animal soul is going to feel good drinking. Of course not. It's chesed to the spark of the coffee, because the coffee gets to be elevated. And if it's not kosher, now, boom, it goes back into the world, and the spark's going to have to do the whole trip again and find its way back to me again, because if it's my spark, it's my spark. No one else can elevate it. And it's, back on the roller coaster ride of creation, right? So it's waiting. Everything that you encounter is waiting to see, am I finally going to get elevated? Is Smolash finally going to do the right thing and use me properly? And if there's a question, it's very difficult for that spark, because now that spark is like denied and has to go around again, and who knows how long it'll take. Whereas if there's a question and the spark is permitted to ascend, That's a great chesed to that spark. So the chesed is not to us. The chesed is to the things that we interact with. And we should remember that as we interact with things, that it's a responsibility, right? Things rely on us once they're in our lives.
And the tikkunim.
Tikkunim, that's the Zohar,
Oh,
as explained in the Zohar.
So it's like an electrical circuit.
You could say it's like an electrical circuit, yeah. Although electrical circuits actually are waves, right? They go through fields, like the power doesn't go through the wire.
Yeah,
So maybe it's like that, I don't know.
an invisible wire.
Yeah, exactly. V'hitlabshut malchut atzilut b'malchut divriya mitlabeshet b'hechal kodshei kodashim ditzira shehu chokma bina dat ditzira. Go ahead, who's next? Let's go with, we switch. Let's go with Doreen, then Paula, then Susan, then Linda.
By virtue of the clothing of Malchut, of Atzilut, in Malchut of Berea, it then clothes itself in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of Yetzirah. This being the Chabad of Yetzirah, the Chachma, Bina, and Da'at of Yetzirah. It is in this manner that the Shrina of Malchut of Atzilut ultimately comes to reside in the world of Britzia.
Excellent. So now we're not gonna, I could make a map of like this entire sort of cascading thing, but it's the same phenomenon each time. You've got the world of Atzilus, which is godliness. You got Malchut of Atzilus, which is the Shrina. That's a light too powerful for the worlds. It enters into the Chabad of the next world, Bria, which is the Torah of Bria, which now we know is Talmud. Excellent. And from there, it flows through all the Sfirot, the godliness of Bria, until it hits Malchut of Bria. And that's where the world of Bria is actually created. And here we use the word created, as we'll see. And finally, Malchus of Bria, that light now enters into the Chabad of the next world of Yetzirah. But it's not just Malchut of Bria that's entering that, it's Malchut of Atzilus, which is contained in it. So in the end, this is going to happen for Yetzirah, it's going to happen for Asiya, it's even going to happen in different ways for the physical world. But finally, when I get down here and I'm learning about a gold coin or if you share or weights or whatever in the Torah, and I'm dealing with the physical stuff, that still is, when it's being connected to a Torah idea or a mitzvah, that still is God's chokhmah as it flows down into Malchus of Atzilus, completely unchanged. It still has its total identity.
so when you're drinking your coffee and elevating, okay, is that tikkun olam?
Yeah. Question is that tikkun olam? Tikkun olam. So tikkun olam in Kabbalah is a very technical term where we are reuniting sparks. We're taking godliness that had impregnated the world, so to speak, and now is hiding in physical reality. We're sifting through reality. We finally find a spark. Here's someone that needs help. Here's some tzedakah that I can give. Here's some food that I can eat and do good things with. And then we, in the day when we act, we elevate that spark. We return it back to its source. And that is the job that we are all doing in the world, is refining the world to the point where the world finally tips over into total godliness. So go ahead, Paula, if you want to unmute. There you go.
Yep. When later on the latter, Malchut of Atzilut, together with the Sefirot in which it is enclosed, in Malchut of Berea and in Chabad of Yetzirah, are clothed in Malchut of Yetzirah, the souls which are called Ruchot are created.
So remember, it's when the light finally hits Malchut of each world, that's where the world is created. Some people have learned the different Sfirot and they think, okay, Chesed is creating, and all the Sfirot, those are the godliness of each world. They can't directly create the world either. They shine their light into Malchus, and Malchus is the only one of the Sfirot that is able to actually create a world that can relate to the reality of that world. So it's only once all that light has been collected, so to speak, in Malchus of each world. That's where that world emerges. And look at how beautifully the Alter Rebbe uses every word. And I'm not sure why it's translated created here. If you look at 819, Notzru Haruchot is from Yotzer, is from formation. So really, I would say the Ruchot are formed, not created. And if you look back on page 816, the end of the top chunk, he says, Nivru Hanashamot V'Amalachim Shebabriya, the souls and angels that are in Bria were created. So Bria from bara is a world of creation. That is where things are, that is the created source of things. And each of our souls, as it exists in Bria, is a created entity, so to speak. But certainly angels and any entity in the world as it exists in Bria is a created entity. As it's being formed in Yetzirah, it's already being created in Bria. In Yetzirah, it's now being formed. So the word he uses is notzru, are being formed. So whenever he's talking about the world, he chooses his language very carefully. I'm curious why, maybe just for simplicity, they translate it as created rather than formed. And the angels, Malachim Shebitzira, the angels of Yitzira, and Vegam Misham hi Hamishna Shel Fanenu Shehi Halachot Psukot Hanimshachot Gamken Me Chochma Bin Adad Shel Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Let's do that second paragraph. Susan, go ahead, and then Linda after that.
From there too, the Malchut of Yetzirah comes the Mishnah that we possess, which comprises the legal decisions that are likewise derived from Chabad of the Blessed Ein Sof.
As he's been saying, the final emotional chesed or gevura, yes or no, kosher or not kosher, that comes from the Mishnah, that comes from the world of Yetzirah. Rak shebichinot chochma bin adat shehem ta'amei halachot hem lubashim ugnuzim begufei halachot velo bivchinat gilui.
Only that the categories of Chabad, that is, the reasons and interpretations of the halachot, are clothed and hidden within the laws themselves and are not in a revealed form.
So when you read a Mishnah, it just says, this is the case, this is permitted, this is guilty, this is innocent. It doesn't go into because God, used the same word somewhere else, or because there's another example, or the Mishnah doesn't go into that. But as we said, it's all contained, right? If you speak to a person and you say, did you like this movie? And they say, hated the movie. They thought about it, obviously, but you're encountering their emotion, right? They disliked that movie. They had all their reasons, bad directing, bad acting, but who knows, right? But all you're getting is their feeling about the movie, right? Right? Do you like this restaurant? Oh, I love it, right? And of course, they've already thought this through and now they have a feeling. The Mishnah is that from God. The Mishnah is the quality of God's emotion in the Torah that already contains hidden in it God's intellect. Make sense? So this is the same thing I said. I see some eyes like, as if this is a new idea. Did I? No?
It's a lot to process.
It's a lot to process. I agree. I mean, like I keep saying, this is maybe my 8th or 9th time through the Tanya, learning myself or teaching different people. So you can appreciate how hard it is for us to understand. Yeah, and it never ends. I mean, every time you encounter the Tanya, you're just like, oi, there's still so much to understand. I don't understand enough to ask the question about it. You've asked some good questions. Okay. Acting with lahakel misitra de chesed hayinu lahatir sheyuchal alot el Hashem. I think we're at Linda. Linda, you like to read?
I just read, but where are we?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Acting with forbearance.
No, Rob.
Well, the elements.
Well, the elements.
Okay, I was going to say that's not where I am.
Okay. V'gufei halachot shehen bivchinat gilui hen herat midotav shel ein sof baruch hu bivchinat gilui. While the elements
of the halachot, which are in a revealed form in the Mishnah, are the very reflection of the midot of the blessed Ein Sof in their revealed form.
And Susan, you'll read next?
Sure.
Great. So the halachot, the simple Mishnah, that is the revealed form of God's emotions, right? My son says, hey, can I use your new car? I say no. Right? One word, right? All he gets is my emotion. Sorry, use the station wagon. Whereas why? What am I thinking? The insurance and then this, and does he understand the control? Whatever I'm thinking, that's not revealed. What's revealed is the emotion. כמו שנתבהר לעיל בשם התיקונים דשית סבירן מקנין ביצירה שהן דרך כלל שני קווים ימין ושמאל.
Thus, it has been explained above in the name of the Tekkinim that 6 Sefirot nest in the Yetzirah. They, the 6 Sefirot or Midot, compromise in general 2 extensions, right and left, right representing kindness and left severity. And
if you're new, if you're just watching and you say, oh, here he's saying, look, there's 6 emotions, 6 midot, chesed, gvur, tiferet, netzach, chod, yesod, and there's 6 books of Mishnah. And so isn't it beautiful that there's 6 books that correspond to the 6 Sefirot? And you say, oh, you found a nice little parallel. Like you cherry pick that out, and isn't it cute? And that backs it up. I promise you, as deep as you want to go, it just keeps happening. Because this is not just finding little parallels to back something up. It's actually, this is the spiritual underpinning of the Torah. And if Kabbalah is correct, which we're learning, it's the spiritual underpinning of the world. It's the matrix with which the world is being created. So that's why it's like a kaleidoscope. And the deeper you go into it, you're still going to find, yeah, it matches. Yeah, it matches. Yeah, that works. Yeah, there seems to be a theme here. And there's no point in the entire depth of the Torah, including the Tanya, etc., where the hand of the author is not at work creating themes and matching things up. So I've been learning this now for 7 years, and you keep encountering these beautiful, beautiful parallels where you recognize you're looking at a living structure, and it's more like studying a cell where, of course, if you go into the nucleus of the cell, you're still going to see structure. And if you go into the cell membrane and look into as far as you want, you'll still see structure. It's a living thing, right? So this is like that. I keep losing my spot. Where are we? Acting with forbearance?
Yes. Yeah.
There you go. L'hakel mi sitra de chesed dinu lehatir sheyuchal lalot el Hashem. Let's start. Noreen, if you want to. Nice.
Acting with forbearance deriving from the aspect of kindness, which results in adjudicating leniently. That is to say, to permit a thing to ascend to God.
So here he says it directly. He's not. It's not, it's fine. I don't remember the names in the story, but there was a big rabbi, and there was a question about someone came with a chicken, and the rabbi looked at the chicken, and said, it's kosher, you can eat it. And I wish I remember the names of the different opinions in this, but one of his students came and said, I saw the chicken, and according to halacha vis-a-vis this source, the name Rav so-and-so, I forget the name, that chicken was definitely non-kosher. So how could you rule the chicken to be kosher? The rabbi said, well, this is how I looked at it. I could have ruled that the chicken was not kosher. I could have ruled that the chicken was kosher. If I ruled that the chicken was non-kosher, I would have been called to a Bais Din by the chicken, because the chicken would have said, how could you rule that I was non-kosher and not let my soul to ascend to heaven? And I'd have to, sit in heaven and listen to, this Bais Din by the chicken. After ruled that the chicken was kosher, I know this great sage is going to call me to a Bais Din and say, how come you didn't rule by my halakha? And I'll sit in a Bais Din with this great sage and have to listen to that. So in the end, I'd rather be in a Bais Din with a great sage than a Bais Din with a chicken. And it's a true story. It's not an anecdote like a joke. That actually was brought down, because when we act leniency, when a rabbi rules leniently, it's permission for that article to ascend to God. It's being lenient towards that article, not towards the person, the householder who wants to eat that chicken. Okay, of course that family is hungry and I get it, but you're actually ruling with chesed towards the object. Or in a stringent matter, והכל על פי חוכמה עילאה דאצילות ובינה ודעת כלולות בה. Go ahead, Dan.
Or acting in a stringent manner and so on, declaring that the object to be forbidden for use and thereby precluding its elevation to holiness. This is an act of severity. These two traits, kindness and severity, represent the two general directions of the emotive attributes as they exist above and from which the halakha of the Mishnah derive. Keep going.
And all this?
And all this, both the Mishnah and Talmud, is according to the supernal Chachma of Atzilut, and Bina and Dat are comprised in it. That is, in Chachma.
So this is the take home. However far down this structure of how the worlds are creating or going, Chochma B'Tzilus, the actual Torah of God, there's God's first aha that creates the whole world, that's all contained in it. So Chochma B'Tzilus is still the identity of anything happening here as the Torah comes down in each of the worlds, including right here in the physical world. Miuchadot be'ein sof baruch hu ki betoch kulan melubashot chochma bina dat atzilut. She'or ein sof baruch hu miuchad bahen betachlit hayichud.
And they, the Mishnah and Talmud, and the illumination of Chabad and Yidot found in them, are united with the blessed Ein Sof, for all of them are clothed Chabad of Atzilus, with which the light of the blessed Ein Sof is united in a perfect union.
And when I unite with Chochma V'Tzilus, what is the definition of Chochma V'Tzilus? It is receptivity to the Ein Sof. Chochma is just self-nullification. No world, nothing exists, just pure Ein Sof, and it's the quality of nullifying myself, any identity of the world, and being receptive to the Ein Sof. So if what comes down is actually Chochma V'Tzilus, that means that's the Ein Sof. The Ein Sof is in it. And that should be impossible, but Torah allows that to happen. It allows the Ein Sof to come right down to the very physical world, as we'll learn in the next chapter, the very stones of the tablets of the 10 commandments, the 10 statements, and that can be just Ein Sof, boom, right there. Yorda Hashchina v'nitlabsha b'hechal kodesh kodeshim dasiya.
In like manner, that is, in the same manner that the Shrina first clothed itself in the level of Malchut of Yetzirah, the Shrina then descended and clothed itself in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of Yetzirah.
And so if you map that process, you get a Chabad of a world, which is the Torah of that world, that can contain the Shrina of the world above it, right? And then from there, it radiates to the rest of the godliness of that world, the rest of the Sfirot, hits Malchut, creates the world, and now has a Shrina ready for the next world, has energy ready to relate to the lower world below it. And now that happens again with Asiya. It enters into the Holy of Holies, the Chabad or the Torah of Asiya. Right, so this is the basic structure, right? You have the Shrina, which is basically godliness. Then you have a world. The world has its brain. That's the Chabad of that world. That's like the Torah of that world. The Shrina enters into the brain. It radiates to the rest of the body, like in us, and that's all the other Sfirot. They shine into Malchut of that world. That's where that actual world is created, the angels, the beings, the whatevers. And now that world is there, and now that world is still a spiritual world, wanting to relate to a world below it, and then it starts over again. You have the new Malchut of that world, which is the Shrina of that world. But boom, if I'm below that, that's still godliness, and that's going to nullify me. So I need now the Torah of the next world. Right? It's the same process. Shrina, Chabad, shines through the world, goes into Malchus of that world, creates the world, creates Shrina for the next world. Yeah?
So there's different Shrinas all the way down, or is it the same Shrina that
Malchut, Tzachah, Malchut, Kalamim. We're going to get to that, right? That's in this chapter, yeah. See, we're just you're exactly going where the Alter Rebbe is going. So put a pin in that question. Right? Is the same Shrina in every world?
That's a good question.
That's the question, right?
Hey.
You got me excited. I forgot where I was. In a like manner?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
V'chein b'derech ze yorda hashchina v'nitlabsha b'hechal kodesh kodeshim dasiya.
I read that in like manner.
Oh, you read that?
I read that,
Oh.
yeah.
בכל עולם מגיעים העולמות אלו מתחלק לרבבות מדרגות הנקראות גם כן עולמות פרטים. Let's start over again online. Eleanor, go ahead. Eleanor, Doreen, Paula, Susan, Linda.
And each of these three worlds, Berea, Yetzirah, and Yesiah, is subdivided into myriads of gradations, which are also called particular worlds.
So in case you thought this was some kind of map that you could just hang your hat on, this is just categories of worlds. In each world are infinite gradations of worlds. So really, it just keeps happening again and again, and there's no end to the ability of the Ein Sof to create worlds. For the sake of discussion, and because there are certain qualitative distinctions of each of these categories, the Tikkunim describe 4 particular worlds, which are levels that contain infinite gradations, each world's within themselves. So it just goes off. ומלכות אצילוס מלובשת במלכות של כל עולם פרטי יורדת מתלבשת בהיכל קודשי קודשים, שהוא חוכמה בינה דעת שבעולם שלמטה ממנו במדרגה.
And Malchut of Atzilut, the liver of Shrina, is clothed in A, the level of Malchut of each particular world. B, moreover, through the above-mentioned enclothing, it descends, and C, encloses itself in the shrine of the Holy of Holies, namely the Chabad, which is in the world below it in rank. We thus have the Malchut of Atzilut, as it is enclosed in the Malchut of a world of higher rank, descending into the Chabad of a world of lesser rank.
So we had a big question was asked: is the Shrina the same Shrina in every world? How many Shrinas does God have, etc.? And here we're getting to the answer. Malchut of Atzilus is the Shrina. When it comes down and is Malchut of a lower world, it still is Malchut of Atzilus, it just has put on more clothing. It's enclosed itself in the Malchut of the lower world, right? So it is Malchut of Atzilus always, it just has now enclosed itself in the Malchut of Bria and Yetzirah. And the Alter Rebbe once asked a question: if a great, great person were to come and hug me, does it really matter if they're wearing one garment or 50 garments, right? If Gretchen Whitmer came and said, Smolash, I'm so proud of what you're doing, I want to give you a big hug, and boom, came and embraced me on television. Wow, Cantor Smolash is friends with Gretchen Whitmer, amazing. Someone's gonna look at that and say, well, hold on, it was winter and she was wearing a jacket. He didn't get hugged by her, he got hugged by her coat, right? No part of her touched him, it was a coat that hugged him. I mean, big deal, right? Of course, if you're just a normal person, you say it doesn't matter. That was her, she hugged him, or name your celebrity or politician or whoever. If a great person hugs somebody, you don't care how many levels of clothing they're wearing, you got hugged by the person, right? We know. So same thing with Shrina. Although godliness comes and dresses up in many, many, many layers of clothing, ultimately when I'm learning the Torah, I'm encountering the Shrina, and no matter how much clothing it's put on, how many levels Malchut of Atzilus has come down, you're being hugged by God's right arm of Chesed and left arm of Gevurah, right? And your lips are touching God's words, and you're getting a kiss and a hug, as we learned. And it doesn't matter how much clothing God is wearing. It makes no difference. So, V'zeh yuvan lashon hakatuv, malchut secha malchut kol alamin. I like this one. It's like maybe my favorite line of the Tanya. Doreen, have you read?
Yes.
Yeah, so Paul, why don't you go ahead?
This will enable us to understand the wording of the verse, your kingdom is the kingdom of all worlds.
Your kingdom is the kingdom of all the worlds. We've all heard this. It's in the Torah service, right? Right, it's that in that section. And so often, we're at a bar mitzvah and we open the Torah and things are moving and the family, you're looking at the kids, and this is just in the background. This Malchutcha Malchut Kol Amin. We've heard it so many times, and it's poetic. Your kingship is the kingship of all worlds. You're king of all kings. You're God of gods. It's just lofty poetry to get us to think, God's super special. Look at what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. Malchutecha does not just mean your rulership, your kingship, your malchus, the sphere of malchus that God is, which is malchut of Atzilus. That's God's malchus. That's the malchus of the world. That's just godliness that hasn't been created. It just emanated from God. So God's malchus, malchutecha, that's malchut of Atzilus, is what? Malchut kol alamim. That's your question. Your question was, is Malchut of Atzilus, is it the same Malchus in all the worlds? And he said, yes, Malchutcha, your Malchut of Atzilus, is the same Malchus that's in each of the world. It's just wearing more clothing, right? So this line is just perfectly saying exactly here, and you can never hear the line again without recognizing, wow, when I hit Malchus of this world, which is just Torah, I can learn halacha, whatever I want, that's Malchut of Atzilus. Malchut of Atzilus, God's Malchus, is the Malchus of each of these worlds, including right here. Good answer? I think so too. It's a good answer.
We have a question.
Yes.
So in a silu, when the Malchut Shekinah comes down, it goes down and goes down. So if we're in our world, where does it go?
It hits physical reality. So that's we learned that God wants a dira b'tachtonim. God wants a home in the lowest place. So, someone mentioned a electrical cord. So it's not, but if you imagine it's an electrical cord coming down, 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 eventually it wants to plug in. And once it's plugged in, it's plugged in. So there's nowhere lower to go than the physical world. And once it's gone through this whole process, and finally Malchus expresses itself as a piece of physical Torah in the physical world, now boom, the circuit's complete. And now the Ein Sof itself, as it's within Chokhmah, as that's enclosed in Malchut of Atzilus, which is the Malchut of all the worlds, boom, godliness itself, right here, God's Chokhmah is plugged into the physical world, and that's the whole point of creation. So now you have God having a home in the physical world that's not just God is everywhere, but that actually adapts to and says, yes, I understand that I am godliness. I can accept that. I'm a vessel for that. And that's what God had in mind when God created the world. Yeah, so that is the terminal. That's the point. That's why physical actions, physical reality, mitzvahs, learning, saying physical words of Torah, that's the focus of all of this. Yeah, I want to have emotions. I want to infuse it with kavanah and a soul, but you got to start with an actual physical mitzvah because there's nowhere else for it to go. That clicks, that plugs in.
But then he wants it back.
Well, it's gotten back.
What? What's that?
It's gotten back.
It's the pathway back. Pathway to God.
Yeah. I mean,
this-
so how far up
it's
it goes
not
that?
complete until your action, like we're talking about the cup,
Yeah.
that energy or whatever has to once again flow back.
Yeah, and they learned the next section on kavanah, where I've done a mitzvah, but I want to elevate it as high as possible. For that, I have to draw down the energy from the different worlds into my intellect, into my emotions, and infuse the mitzvah with that so it has wings.
The bird with its wings.
Yeah. But even if I don't, I still completed the purpose of creation, right? So the question of once the Shrina hits the physical world, now what, right? There's no more what. That's what God wanted. God's there. Now, do I want the mitzvahs to go ascend back higher? Yeah, but that's a different conversation, right? Which you
And I
had.
read this week, that's why God no longer needed Moshe. Because the people.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up. והנה מהשכינה המלובשת בהיכל קודשי קודשים של כל עולם ועולם, כלל או פרטי נמשך מתפשט ממנה אור וחיות לכל העולם והבריאים שבו נשמות ומלאכים וכו'.
It is from the Shekinah, which is clothed in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of each and every general or particular world, that light and vitality are extended and diffused to that whole world, and the creatures contained therein, the souls, angels, and so forth.
So that Shrina of each world, that creates the world. The Malchut of that world creates its world. Why? Ki kulam nivru basara mamarot shebemase v'reshit shehem devar Hashem anikra b'shem Shrina. Let's go
For they
ahead.
were all created by the 10 divine utterances of creation, these being God's speech, which is termed by the Shekhinah.
And that is, what is Malchut? Malchut in our reality is our ability to express. So that's speech, right? When we're speaking, discussing, asking questions, that is Malchut expressing, or when we're walking or doing an action. And so Malchut of Atzilus, when we say God said something, that means light emerged from Malchut of Atzilus. And when God said the 10 statements at the beginning of creation, let there be light, etc., that was not some giant mouth in outer space talking, obviously. That was the only way the prophets in the Torah could describe what it means when Malchut of Atzilus expresses and emanates these 10 statements that are still creating the world, So the 10 statements in Breshit that God said that are creating the world, that is also Malchut of Atzilus. So we can add that to what was it, 6 different names that we learned about Malchut of Atzilus last chapter. And just one addition that has to do with what this class is, which is Kabbalah. When the light comes down and hits the Torah of a particular world that we described, and now that world, its identity is dependent on that level of Torah. We learned about Mikra, that's for physical reality and action, that's the world of Asiya. Mishnah, that's God's feeling, that's the world of Yetzirah. And Bria, that's God's intellect, which is the intellectual world of Bria. But there's another world of Atzilus, right? So keep in mind, each of these worlds, they contain godly energy that comes down through each of the worlds and stops at its particular world. So it's not just that world, it's that world and everything above it. Because it's godliness as it's flowed down through each world. So the Shrina that's in Yetzirah, say, it contains the energy, obviously, of the Shrina that's in Bria and Atzilus. Because the Malchut of Atzilus is the Malchut of all those worlds. So it's godliness as it has flown down to and including everything above it. But there's still one world. There's still the world of Atzilus. So if the Mishnah represents godliness as it flows down to and including everything, including and above Yetzirah, what is the definition of the godliness as it is in Atzilus? Well, that is the level of Kabbalah. That's the level of Kabbalah. So if our levels are Mikra, written Torah, Mishnah, Talmud. Now above that, Atzilus, that's defined by the level of Kabbalah. And what does that mean? It means it's before intellect.
That's why we can't understand anything.
That's why we can't understand. And it's defined by Chokhmah, which is what we said, the power of receptivity. Right? So Noreen, you said Kabbalah is receiving. You can't figure out Kabbalah. Something that's above intellect, like the elder said, it's like saying something's too deep. I need a longer arm so I can reach it. This math problem is too deep. I need someone with a longer arm to figure it out for me. It's like, no, it's not deep that way. You can't reach down physically. And so I'm trying to understand a kabbalistic concept, right? My intellect is saying, I need to be smarter. If I was a more profound intellectual person, I could figure it out. No, that's as silly as saying that my arm, if it was longer, could reach a math problem, right? The intellect cannot reach above the intellect. So godliness as it is in Atzilus, still not come down into any garments, not adapted in any way to anything that the intellect can deal with. You can't figure it out. You can only just be receptive to it. So that's why Kabbalah represents godliness as it is still in Atzilus. And that's why you just have to receive it. And even after you've learned it, you're like, did I get anything? Am I relating to this? Am I accessing it? I don't think so, right? Yes. All of us feel much, much better. I should have said that on day one. Oi. Now we feel much better. Now let me set up chapter 53 because I do want to finish for this team we're doing, and I'm getting a little behind. So if it's okay, we won't meditate today. If you take a little time on your own sometime today, I'd appreciate it. Let me set up chapter 53. So as we learn this, you might think that this is just a cascade sort of, and then it's flowing down, etc. And that finally, when godliness was entering the physical world, that was what you would define Malchut of Atzilus, that finally the world of physical spirituality flows into Malchut of that world, and that's what enters the world. In chapter 53, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that the Shrina that entered the Holy of Holies of the physical Beis Hamikdash, the physical temple, and we're going to learn about the first and the second temple and the differences between them, it actually was not Malchut of Atzila as you would expect, Malchut of Atzilut as you would expect. But in fact, he'll say that in the end, in the first Beis Hamikdash in particular, it was only Malchut of Briut, of Bria, that level skipped everything else and went directly into the Holy of Holies in the temple. And it's for that reason that there were many of the miracles associated with it. And that's why the temple was such a holy place. But it's tied to this idea of what you asked, Dan, that, so what happens when the Shrina finally gets here into physical reality? Or sorry, Eleanor asked, right? That this was so dear to God to have a dira, right? A dear dira in the lowest realm, that once the Shrina enters physical reality, that's not just the Shrina you'd expect, that's actually the Shrina that's higher than even the Shrina in the spiritual worlds. And that's because ultimately it's here that the intent of creation was. And so the bulk of the Shrina, the power of the Shrina is all here and is not actually in the spiritual worlds. In the end, we want to access the Shrina of the spiritual worlds just to elevate our mitzvahs, as you described. But the Shrina that entered into the Holy of Holies was far holier than the Shrina in the spiritual worlds, right? Let's get just a little start on it, so kind of get where the Alter Rebbe is going. We're in chapter 53, page 825. V'hine k'shehaya bait rishon kayam shebo ha'haron v'haluchot beveit kodshei kodashim. Let's start. Noreen, why don't you start?
At the time the first temple stood, in which the ark and the tablets were housed in the Holy of Holies.
Right, so we may know the first temple had the ark and the tablets. The second temple did not physically have them. They were buried in a labyrinth under Jerusalem, and they're meant to reappear, at the time of the Messianic period, which Reform Judaism works for, like everyone. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Solomon knew that there was going to be destroyed. Solomon was a wise guy, very wise guy. And so he built labyrinths under the temple when he built the temple. And then a king, I'm forgetting his name, when it looked like the temple would be destroyed, went and hid the Aron and the tablets in these labyrinths. And there's different traditions and historical maybe what, but by Kabbalah, they're still there. And they were not there physically. When they built the second temple, they did not put them in. The second temple was just an empty room. The Holy of Holies didn't have that. Well, it didn't have the Aron. And it's understood in Kabbalah that in the time when the Messianic period, when it finally arrives, that we'll have access again to the Ark and the tablets of the Ten Commandments. So,
Still in the lab down there somewhere.
Yeah, by Kabbalah.
By Kabbalah.
You'll find many people arguing with me, historians or archaeologists, I'm sure. But I'm teaching Kabbalah, so that's above time. It's above historical arguments. So there.
So we can't blame the Babylonians.
There you go. The Haita Shrina Shehi Malchut Atzilut Shehi Bechinat Gilui or Ein Sof Baruch Hu. That Dan 8:26.
The Shekinah, which is Malchut of Atzilut, that is the revealed light of the Ein Sof, a light which intrinsically is infinite and transcends all worlds, and which nevertheless was revealed in them.
All right, so the Shrina, which we still have the same first definition, Malchut of Atzilut, God's speech, 10 statements, right? That Shrina, the real deal Shrina, Shora Sham Mubeshet Asera HaDibrot,
dwelled there and was clothed in the Ten Commandments, which were engraved upon the tablets found in the ark in the Holy of Holies.
Right, so now we're talking about the 10 Commandments, not the 10 statements, right? So to be clear, God says, let there be light, let there be a distinction between upper and lower waters, let there be crawling things. God said 10 things in Bereshit that are still in the heavens creating the world now. Now we're talking about God's 10 commandments that we got on Sinai, which contain the whole Torah, right? We know the well-known tradition, there's 620 letters in the words of the 10 commandments. That corresponds to the 613 mitzvot plus the 7 rabbinic commandments. So those 620 commandments contain the entire Torah in germ form, right? In point form, in seminal form.
6, 1, and 3 equals 10.
And then 6, 1, and 3 equals 10. Very nice. Yeah. So it all adds together. Right. So the Shrina was clothed directly in those 10 commandments. And as we'll see, this was not coming through the normal process where the world is created of Malchut of Atzilus finally emerging and creating a world. And as we learned as we learned from the Alter Rebbe, that it went through a whole process of going through the different letters and permutations until it finally creates physical objects and shifts down the energy. The 10 commandments, that's directly Malchut Atzilus, that's the word of God, and they went boom right into those stones in a way that defined any ability of reality to contain godliness. V'yeter se'et v'yeter oz b'gilui rav v'tzum yoter migiluyah b'chelot kodshei kodshim shelemala b'olamot elyonim.
Far more intensely and with greater and mightier revelation than its revelation in the shrines of the Holy of Holies above in the upper worlds.
Right, so we've been learning about the Malchut of Atzilus as it is in Bria and Yetzirah, and we think, wow, that's big time godliness. And it comes down here, and I just get, yeah, it's enclosed in it, but I can pick it up and learn it. It's a Torah, whatever. It says, no. The Torah that came into the Holy of Holies, the physical first Beis Hamikdash, was not just more intense, was far b'yeter more intense than the way that the Shrina entered the Holy of Holies in the upper worlds. Right, so we think we're just getting, the Shrina with many, many garments. We're actually getting a purer, a more powerful Shrina than even the upper worlds are getting. Surprising, right? Let me just read the English. We're going to wrap up shortly. For the 10 commandments are the all-embracing principles of the whole Torah. As we saw, the Torah, that's the Chabad of each world, that is the only element that is able to withstand the light of the Shrina from above it, because Torah is God's Chokhmah. The 10 commandments contain all of that. There's nothing in Torah, the entire sea of Torah, everything, even the Torah of the world to come, even the Torah of the Messianic era, which is almost described as a new Torah because it's just such new revelations that it seems like it's a different Torah even, but it's the same Torah, it's just new depths of revelation. So the Alter Rebbe wrote the entire Tanya on one verse of Torah. Imagine if you can get a Tanya out of one line of Torah. And here you have all of Chassidus, all of Chabad Chassidus is based on this one text, which came from that one line. And you have 7 generations of Rebbes spinning off volumes and libraries of Chassidus based on this one line. Imagine the sea of Torah that's contained in each one line. And that all, everything, anything anyone could ever find in heaven and earth, that's all contained in the 10 commandments. It's just beyond staggering. That's the energy that was in the 10 commandments. Which derives from the level of supernal chokhmah that is far higher than the world of manifestation, right? So supernal chokhmah, whatever world we're talking about, the Shrina is the world of manifestation, the revealed world, and chokhmah is infinitely higher above that. So the 10 commandments contains everything that emerged from chokhmah. It's all here in the physical tablets of the 10 commandments, and that's not just higher, but he says, right? So higher and even more higher, right? This is just infinitely higher than the way the Shrina appears as Malchut of Atzilus. So you see he's wrapping up for the end of the Tanya. That gets us to the end of our class. Thanks for joining. When we start, we'll start at page 828. And if you're watching from anywhere, we're going to have a siyum. We're going to have a celebration marking the end of 4 years of learning Tanya here at Temple Israel, of learning this Kabbalistic text. It'll be at my house. So if you'd like to come, please, if you've been in our class at any point, if you come at any point in the 4 years, if you've been watching online and you're in town and you can make it, please email Maya at temple-israel.org, Maya@temple-israel.org. She'll give you the location, etc., the information for the siyum. That'll be on September 15th, Thursday, September 15th at 10:30 in the morning. I'd love to welcome all of you. We'll have a little celebration, a little chaim, and we'll start, we'll just touch on the new text that we're going to be starting. So thanks for joining. Have a beautiful Shabbat and see you very soon.